passionate about. So when the schools need to make reductions for student enrollment, we're blind that more reflects when they have knowledge about what the looks like. We're not have this artificial increase of the churning of the
Thank you very much. Those in support of the bill.
Well, we don't know.
There we go.
We don't know. That's my way of saying stop talking.
It's a sign. It's a voice from heaven.
Stop for now. But where was I going to say that? I interrupted my train of thought. But and one of the other problems is with the March notification initial deadline is our notification date is that it's right before testing windows, and so when you have teachers who have been noticed that they're going to be laid off, the morale goes down, and that is something that we have been fearing with the testing window right around the corner as well. So for those reasons, we support the bill.
Erin Evans-Feud, I'm here with the School Employers Association of California, also here in support.
I'm Debbie Fry with the Metropolitan Education District, and we're in support of the bill as well.
My name is Tom Mullen, and I'm in support of the bill. I'm a Human Resources Director. I'm a former school administrator and a former teacher, and I've gotten a few of these pink slip notices in March, and they're very uncomfortable from a teacher's standpoint of view. They do interrupt the teaching process, as the lady to our right said a bit ago. And I'd like to give you just a bit of the financial piece. In April of 2012, we initiated layoff notices on 32 teachers. Of the 32 teachers that we began the layoff notices on, actually 4 of them got to the hearing process. And of the 4 that got to the hearing process, we did not end up laying off any of the teachers. The cost to our district, which is a very small district, was $29,000. That's around $7,250 per employee that went to a hearing, which is sort of outrageous when you stop and think about that being about 2/3 of a starting teacher's salary. During the course of the past several years, about 7 years, we've laid off a goodly number of folks, mostly teachers and staff. We went from about 350 employees down to 166. And each of those folks got that notice in March and had to carry that around with them until the final May notice. And it does impact students. It does impact morale. There really is no measurement other than to say it's a huge human impact. So we do support the bill.
Good morning. I'm Dennis Myers with the California School Board Association. We don't have a position on these amendments, but I would just encourage you to keep the bill moving. It needs work. We've been looking a long time at these dates. As we just heard from the previous witness, having the March 15th causes school districts to over-notice in down years or in flat years because they don't know how the budget's going to look. So it's really a function that these dates don't match up with accurate and sufficient budget information from the state. We think that there needs to be work on, just looking at what dates work, but also on some of the procedures that go with perfecting the list, challenging the list, and some of the hearing procedures that would make later dates work. And so, obviously, everything would have to come back to this committee. We would just ask that maybe you give the community, including teachers and administrators and school board members and others, to try to work out something because we think this bill is headed in the right direction and it impacts a very important issue. Thank you.
Sarah Botches with the California Association of School Business Officials. We as well have not taken a formal position at this moment, but would appreciate the direction the author is heading and would like to continue working with him. Thank you so much.
Opposition, please.
Good morning. My name is David Fisher, and I've been an elementary school teacher here in Sacramento City Unified School District for the past 18 years. And over the last several years, as everyone knows, class sizes have risen in my classroom from 20 to 25, 29, and now 31. I've seen countless friends and colleagues receive pink slips, tell them that they're being laid off. Of course, I've shared the tears and the anxiety that come with the notices. Oftentimes, those teachers have just gotten married, maybe bought a house, or had a new child, sometimes all three. So you can only imagine the fear and anxiety that comes with those notices. But at least my friends had some time to look for work or to prepare for a possible loss of jobs. Layoffs are bad. Why do we want to make them worse? Other times, the March notice gave teachers time to correct mistakes that had to do with credentialing, and the hearings actually saved jobs. One of my best friends, who actually my son and her son are best friends, had her job saved because there was a credential mistake, and that can happen because of the early notice. Changing the notice date to give my friend less time would have been a horrible mistake. So changing the notice date to a later date would make it too late for teachers to look for other jobs in other districts or prepare for a loss of a job. Like I said, and I think we can all agree that layoffs are bad. So the problems with layoffs has nothing to do with the notice date, it's the layoffs themselves. We've laid off hundreds of teachers here in Sac City alone, increasing class sizes and affecting the learning environment in our schools. Changing the notice date to give teachers even less time to look for work or prepare or correct a mistake is not a solution. In fact, it adds insult to injury and makes an already difficult situation even worse. Local teachers and I ask you to please vote no.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, Senators, Happy New Year. Seth Bramble representing the California Teachers Association. CTA respectfully is in opposition to Senate Bill 559. Essentially, when a teacher is laid off, they get this pink slip on March 15th, final notice by May 15th. The proposal here is to move to a May 15th, June 15th timeline with the ability to negotiate something different, and it's unrealistic for a couple of reasons. First, the idea that you're going to negotiate such a difficult decision that, and I'm talking about there is no district, whether labor or management, that's going to come to the table and negotiate such a difficult decision to occur earlier. To come to the table, for example, and make a decision that rather than lay off 10 teachers or 9 teachers, that you're not going to explore every alternative and wait till the end date. So the conclusion here that's going to occur is whatever these dates that are proposed here will become cemented into the process. It's unrealistic, additionally, to say that a process that takes 2 months, again, right now it's March 15th, May 15th, can somehow be accomplished in 1 month without explaining how that's going to occur. Right now, what happens during those 2 months, you have hearings that occur, you have decisions by an administrative law judge, you have school board meetings, all that stuff is time consuming. Right now, the hearing date begins almost immediately. The hearings begin in that March 15th timeline and run all the way until May 15th. So the idea that you're going to somehow shortcut, well, I would suggest the only solution there would be to shortcut due process in some way. But the idea that you can take a 2-month period process and suddenly squish that into 1 month is just unrealistic. The layoff timeline is not in alignment with the budget timelines. It's in alignment with employment timelines. It's in alignment with kind of the common sense notion that it takes some time to find work. There are still small school districts that close during the summertime. What the senator is proposing is that on June 15th, which for the majority of teachers in this state means during the summertime, teachers will get notice where they may be out of town on vacation, come back, be out of a job with no time to look for new employment. It's extremely problematic. When we talk about the major conversation, most of the witnesses came forward to talk about too many pink slips. That's the conversation here. Over riffing. Does it occur? Yes. Are there too many pink slips that come forward? Yes. This proposal does nothing to resolve that issue because districts over riff because they're cautious, because they're unsure what the numbers are, and there will always be insecurity. There will always be a lack of clarity as to what those numbers are. Even if the deadlines were pushed out past the adopted budget in July 1, still districts are making decisions all the way up to the first day of school when they see how many kids are going to be in that classroom, how many 6th grades they're going to need to prepare for. There will always be disclarity. The only way to resolve this problem with pink slipping too many folks is to provide the kind of funding that will allow you not to have a need for pink slips in the first place, that will bring California out from the bottom of the 50 states with respect to per pupil spending in this state. I do need to make one correction, if I can, through the sergeant, to the letter that I submitted. If I could just pass out, because there was an error in the letter that I submitted. I submitted something essentially saying that 20,000 of our members were laid off last year. The problem that I had was that the letter was drafted in 2013. So 20,000 of our members were pink slipped in 2012, but this is correct information for last year. In 2013, there were less than 4,000 pink slips that were issued. So what happened to go from 20,000 pink slips to less than 4,000 pink slips? When you talk about over-riffing, that's a concrete solution here. How did we get from 20,000 to approximately 3,500 pink slips in the state of California? That occurred because the voters in 2012 came together and passed Proposition 30, invested in our kids. And that's the big picture conversation here. There's no more graphic illustration than going from 20,000 to 4,000, a reduction of 16,000 pink slips in the state, simply by investing in our kids, investing in our schools. And I would predict that there will be even less pink slips this year. We urge your no vote.
Thank you.
Good morning. Jai Suprasit with the California School Employees Association. We don't have a formal position, but if it's a reduction in time for an employee to prepare for a traumatic event, we would be in opposition, and so we would lodge our concerns today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kendra Harris with the California Federation of Teachers. We're also unopposed for all the reasons that were previously stated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, Mitch Seaman with the California Labor Federation, also in opposition.
Okay, thank you. Any others in opposition? Seeing none, I'm going to take a pause, Senator Huff, and call the roll.
Liu?
Here.
Liu here. Wyland?
Here.
Wyland here. Block?
Here.
Block here. Correa?
Here.
Correa here. Hancock?
Here.
Hancock here. Wessel?
Here.
Wessel here. Huff?
Here.
Huff here. Torres? You have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. Okay. So, oh, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry. Morning. I'm sorry, you're in the very last. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, any other one who wants to be called?
Yes,
Right.
please.
Okay. Questions from members about this bill? Senator Wyland.
I think we've heard Senator Huff and from those who've testified on both sides what a problem this is. And I started out on a local school board, and it's a problem. No board member, I can guarantee you, wants to lay off any teachers. You don't want to do it. And as I think all of us know, they're stuck. They're stuck because we have a system where they don't know what their funding's going to be. And I grant there are sometimes other issues, but I'll tell you from my own experience, it's they don't know. And for years, what I wanted to do, and now maybe someone when I'm gone will try to work on this, will actually try to change the state's fiscal year. Funding for schools, it sounds dramatic, but funding for schools is the #1 thing that we do. And if you look at all the way up through universities, it's half of what we spend. And I think that might be a more dramatic way of doing it. But in the short run, I think what Senator Huff is proposing is actually designed to make it better, because we all know that once those slips go out, at least in my experience, a lot of teachers will say, and are said with sort of a wink and a nod by the administration, yeah, I know we have to do it, but you're going to be okay. So, which is not to negate how awful it is, especially for young teachers, and especially with what we've gone through recently. I fully get that. The only other thing that I think is important to say, because we don't think about it enough when we talk about more funding. we had Prop 30, and there probably will be others. And there probably will, and maybe our economy will keep going. But in the long run, it would be great to have all the folks involved in the schools, including especially the CTA and others, help us make this a more prosperous state. If you add various other taxes, and I think those will come down the pike, I don't think they're going to be enough to accomplish what we want to accomplish unless we can keep more businesses in this state. You all have power, enormous power. And when we lose an Intel over 15 years that has spent billions, as one example, billions of dollars, or a Boeing, billions of dollars in other states and hired thousands of employees, we need to keep those here. So it would be great to have help, you know, trying to make a more robust economy, whatever the taxes are, that produce more funding. Anyway, I will move the bill.
Okay, thank you. Others comment? Senator Correa?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was listening to this discussion, this debate on this bill. It reminded me of my recent years raising 4 children in public schools and dropping off my kids at elementary schools. And you, sir, as a teacher, I thank you for your service. In these very hard years raising these children, dropping them off at school, and then some of our unified school districts, Santa Ana in particular, I remember those very hard years, dropping out the kids, talking to the teachers, and those teachers telling me, I got a layoff notice. Then I'd call the unified office and say, what's going on? Well, Lou, it's very difficult right now. You guys haven't passed the budget. The budget looks very difficult, but because of the state of the law, we have to send out these notices. We can focus on, there's 2 issues that I picked up here that we can focus on. Number 1, is there enough time for the teacher to be ready, to be prepared for that layoff? The second issue is really one of the grief that this, just in case we have to send you the layoff notice, the morale, the lack of morale, the lost morale in the school that it causes when all these teachers get that notice. And you know what? A lot of the times, most of the times, those notices, those layoffs didn't take place. That's the concern that I have. Yeah. And I will tell you, I thank the taxpayers of the state of California. I thank the voters of the state of California for Prop 30. But today I see this as an issue of, you know, the state of the law right now compels you to send out those notices with such lead time. That does cause a lot of anguish and a lot of concern within the ranks. Not only the children, but the teachers. And a lot of those teachers live in my communities. So I talk to them on a, almost on a day-to-day basis. So again, I thank the author for bringing in the bill, and I thank you as a teacher for what you've done for our children in our state.
Thank you. Senator Block, and then Senator Moaning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I've been on both sides of this as a board member and as a school teacher a long time ago. And as a teacher, frankly, the idea that a teacher would be less likely to do their job once they got a pink slip, to me, is insulting. These are very dedicated people. They get a pink slip, of course they worry about their job, but just like us, everybody has concerns about their job, concerns about their home life, but when you're on the job, you do the job. So I think the kids are being well served by the teachers who are there, regardless of the pink slip date. Having said that, I do think there's room for administrators to do a better job. They have not done a very good job of predicting the number of layoffs they will actually have to make. Now, the voters have done some good things. Proposition 30 and Prop 25, which makes budgeting much more predictable and on-time budget almost a certainty, will help school administrators predict what the legislature and governor are going to do in terms of a budget and make these massive pink slips, I think, much less necessary in the future. So we've moved toward correcting the problem in the right way. But to me, it's incumbent upon the administration and human resource folks and business officers to do a better job of predicting layoffs needed, not a matter of taking time away from teachers, good teachers, who will be in the job market. We can't put them in the job market in the summer. It's just too late for teachers. Hiring is done before that. As a former teacher, I mean, I knew in the springtime is when teachers are interviewed, when teachers get their jobs. If you don't know till June 15th, and as has been said, many teachers may be out of town doing other things in the middle of June, it's going to be hard for you to find a job for that following August, if not impossible. We lose some of our best teachers. If good teachers get a pink slip and they're worried about their job, there are other districts that may be hiring. The best of the best will find other positions. We need to make sure for our students that these teachers have early notice, that these teachers can then be recycled, if you will, into being very good teachers in another district if one district has more teachers than they can afford. To me, it's an area where reasonable minds can differ how to best resolve what is a bad situation, but putting the burden on teachers who are being laid off, cutting the time in which they can react to these notices, and doing it in the name of kids who I think are being taught well by these teachers regardless of whether they have a notice or not, is just the wrong way to go. So I'll be voting no.
Thank you. Senator Monning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the author for bringing this forward. The district I represent, I know of teachers who have been on the receiving end of the pink slip and have had to make plans for their families. But the balance that we need to strike is giving teachers adequate time. The best thing we have going for us right now is an improved budget climate, the passage of Prop 30. When we look at the governor's budget that was just introduced last week, school districts have a new challenge, trying to figure out how to best invest increased restoration of funding. And again, it's restoration, it's not new money, but it is going to allow for much more predictability in planning school budgets even before we pass a final budget. But again, that may be temporary. We will probably face tough times in the future as well. What I think would be the best would be for teacher representatives who seem unanimous in coming down on the side of protecting adequate notice, sufficient notice for teachers. I'm going to side with that protection while recognizing that when massive pink slips are issued, it is insulting to the profession. It does. It's a low blow to a teacher to be told, okay, you may be laid off, but we're going to give you this notice. Families have to have that ability to make the plans. My hope is with a healthier budget and better planning, we can have more precision. And just this data that's shared by CTA of a reduction from 20,000 in 2012 to 3,428 in 2013, that's a reflection not necessarily of better planning, but a healthier budget. I think we need both. So I won't be supporting this in its current form today. I would hope that teacher representatives, our teachers' unions, and administrators might work together to help get a better, more precision, and hopefully we're doing our part with a healthier budget. But it's a critical issue, and I thank the author for framing it for our discussion today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from members? Oh.
I appreciate the comments from the other members. You know, this is a tough problem. Maybe there's a way to revisit it. I think part of it is the districts really don't know. I mean, that was our problem. You just don't know. And you don't want to be in a position of not being able to fund it. And so we did this, and I know a lot of districts do this. Many of those notices, we said to teachers, we don't think we're going to have to do this. We really don't. And so it makes, in some ways, even tougher because, in our instance, most teachers didn't make any other plans because there had been a history of it. Yeah, okay, some of the newest teachers are going to get these things, but it all works out. And then, of course, if it doesn't, and in the last few years it really has been tough, then it is disastrous. So I think, Senator Huff, you put your finger on a real problem, and I don't think we should let this. I don't think we should let this go. I also think this thing of the fiscal year. I know that sounds really off the wall, but it's not that big a deal for the rest of the state. Companies change fiscal years all the time. For education, the fiscal year and the knowledge of when they're going to get how much money, that's a big deal.
Okay, thank you very much, members, for the discussion. I am going to decide. I'm going to support Senator Huff's position today because I do think that there needs to be a realignment between what districts face and what the state gives in terms of their budget. It does, my only concern is that the conversation kind of ends here because this bill as amended will go to the floor as opposed to having a continued conversation, because I do agree with Senator Weiland that the budget cycle for schools, it doesn't coincide with the budget cycle for the state, and so there's not a connection here, and districts have to make decisions that they shouldn't have to make unless they know how much money they have. So I think this is a wonderful experience. Maybe we should tie a time frame to it just to experiment with it, but not you didn't propose that. So, but with that, the bill has been moved, and let's call the roll.
Can I close, Madam
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Because there's some, and I appreciate that, there's some issues raised that I feel like I should address. First and foremost, it was raised that there's not enough time for teachers to find a job. And I just want to re-stress that the current March 15th is totally meaningless. When they get a March 15th slip, they don't know whether they do or not, so they get a wink and a nod from the administration. They say, like Senator Correa said, that, hey, we have to send this out, and it doesn't really mean anything until it starts to become real. Now, the legislative analysts recognize this as a problem, and they made some suggested dates of June and August, as I recall. And so we moved this back in deference to the feedback and conversation we were having that it didn't give enough time. And I recognize if you're getting your final one in August, that's a pretty short timeline. And it certainly favors the districts, not the teachers. And we want to protect our teachers. We don't have enough of them coming into education. By the same token, we don't want to get them so frustrated that when the next economic downturn comes, and it will come, it's as cyclical as the swallows returning to San Juan Capistrano. When it happens, we don't want to do this artificially churning so that we have this problem yet again, and we lose even more young teachers who say, I can't live with this uncertainty. And so by making the final notice on May 15th, it does much more align with the reality of knowing they're going to have a budget, and therefore that is something they can actually start looking. They can't start looking in March. They're not going to look because they think it's bogus. When you get a May 15th, there's a pretty good certainty that that means the district has weighed in what the May revision is looking like. You're getting that buzz about what it looks like. They've analyzed it, and it's likely going to be a layoff. So it's a much more serious and realistic deadline. And finally, the dates are subject to bargaining. So if this is something that the local teachers think doesn't give them enough time, then they can slide it back to where it is. The other thing is there's nothing that requires the districts to do it at May 15th. They can still do it on March 15th if they want without any bargaining or anything. The deadline says they have to do it by that date. So that's the protection for teachers in that they can understand that they're not going to get something after that date. But the school district, if they have a pretty good certainty that teacher's going, then they can certainly give it earlier, or if they feel that it gives them more time to do the appeals and all the other things they need to do, that they can have that earlier trigger. As for the budget cycle of state, hey, I don't disagree with you, but I think that would be sinking our teeth into an issue much bigger than this committee can deal with. It certainly would make a lot of sense, but I've noticed in my 9 years here, we don't always do things that make sense, but we have to deal with the things that we're faced with. So what we're left with is a date that means nothing, but it creates a lot of tension on our workforce. And I have heard teachers talk about how they left the workforce because they just can't go through that emotional turmoil every year. It's the young ones particularly. And frankly, those are the ones we need to stay in teaching and not be bailing out as we have our boomers retiring now. So it leaves us with a process where we overnotice because we have to or we can't make those reductions. It leaves us with an expensive process, as we heard from our experts that have to deal with the issue and the reality that we're spending money then on something that is meaningless, that takes money out of the classroom. and it's also a very emotional issue, and it's unnecessarily that way. So for all those reasons, I appreciate the dialogue we've had. I think this is a good bill, and I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Let's call the roll.
The motion is to pass as amended to Senate floor. Lou?
Aye.
Lou, aye. Wyland? Aye. Wyland, aye. Block? No. Block, no. Correa? Hancock? Wessel? Huff?
Aye.
Huff, aye. Monty? No. Monty, no. Torres? 3 to 2.
3 to 2. I will leave the roll open for absent members.
Thank you.
Thank you. I saw